When you hear the name Haruki Murakami, you probably think of talking cats, alternate universes, maybe some weirdly specific jazz references. But today we're diving into the novel that's, well, different from all of that. We're talking about his quiet, stunning masterpiece of realism, Norwegian Wood.
And honestly, quietly devastating is the perfect way to put it. This quote really nails the feeling of reading this book. It's not about flashy twists or big action scenes. It's a story that just kind of sinks into you and sticks around long after you've put it down.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at what makes this book such a standout in Murakami's work. Then, we'll get into the main character drama, explore the big ideas at its core, talk about the unique style, and finally, we'll help you figure out if this is a book you should pick up.
All right, first up, a different kind of Murakami. We're talking realism in a world where he's usually the king of surrealism. So yeah, if you're a longtime fan, you might need to adjust your expectations a bit.
That's right, you won't find any supernatural stuff here. Norwegian Wood is 100% grounded in the real world. It's all about the messy, fragile, and often painful inner lives of its characters. And honestly, that's what makes it one of his most powerful, and for a lot of people, most relatable novels.
Okay, let's get to the real heart of the story. This triangle of emotion that forms between our main characters, Toru, Naoko, and Midori. The guy whose eyes we see everything through is Toru Watanabe. He's a pretty quiet, thoughtful college kid in 1960s Tokyo. He's more of an observer than a doer, which lets us really soak in the world and the people around him through his very reflective perspective.
And this is where it all gets so interesting. Toru is basically caught between two worlds, represented by these two women. You've got Naoko, who is gentle and fragile, tied to a really painful shared past. She represents sorrow, memory, and this deep vulnerability. And then there's Midori. She's the complete opposite, bold, full of energy, and just refreshingly direct. She represents life, moving forward, and new possibilities. This choice he faces, it's the engine that drives the whole story.
So what's this story really about, underneath it all? Well, that brings us to its four core themes, these pillars of pain and growth that the whole narrative is built on.
First, and this one is huge, is loneliness. I mean, almost everyone in this book feels deeply isolated, even when they're in a crowd. What Murakami does so well is show you that feeling of being in a massive city like Tokyo and still feeling utterly alone. A lot of the time, it's what's not said that carries the most weight.
Next up is love and loss. But this isn't your typical romance novel. The love in Norwegian Wood is completely tangled up with grief. It's sweet and tender, but it's also incredibly painful, always living in the shadow of past tragedies. It's a very real look at how love and sadness often have to exist in the same space.
And that flows right into the theme of mental health. The book tackles things like depression and emotional fragility with so much care and seriousness. It really shines a light on how hard it is for people to even find the words for their internal pain, and how lonely that can be when the world around you doesn't know how to listen.
And finally, at its heart, this is a coming-of-age story, but it's not a very cheerful one. Toru's path to adulthood is all about learning some really tough truths, that growing up means making choices that are going to hurt, that you have to let go of things, and that you have to learn to live with not knowing what's next. It's a very real, very bittersweet picture of leaving your youth behind.
Now let's switch gears and talk about the feel of the book. Section 4, The Sound of Quiet. This is all about Murakami's incredible mood, and of course, the music. Murakami's writing style here is so simple, it's almost deceptive. The sentences are really straightforward, which gives the whole book this intimate, almost like you're reading a diary kind of feel. But under that simple surface, there's just so much emotion. It's melancholic for sure, but it finds this quiet, sad beauty in everyday things, like sharing a quiet meal or just listening to a record play.
And speaking of music, the title itself is a huge clue. It comes from the Beatles song, and that track's nostalgic, kind of sad vibe is basically the perfect soundtrack for the entire novel. Music is everywhere in this book, setting the mood and really pulling you into that time and place, echoing everything the characters are feeling.
Okay, so we've talked story, themes, and style. Which brings us to the big question, the final section, is this book for you?
Let's break it down. Pros and cons. The strengths are huge. The emotional realism is just incredible, the writing is beautiful, and it's such a thoughtful look at grief. But it's definitely not for everybody. The pacing is very slow and reflective. It's emotionally heavy, like really heavy. And if you're looking for a plot with a lot of action, this isn't it.
The whole journey is internal.
So here's the bottom line. If you're the kind of reader who loves quiet, deep, character-driven stories that aren't afraid to dive into some really sad stuff, then this book will absolutely hit hard. It's a really powerful and unforgettable read.
And that quality, that power, is reflected right here in the final rating, a super strong 4.5 out of 5. It's a near-perfect book because it does exactly what it sets out to do, capture emotional truth with honesty and grace.
And that leaves us with this one last thought, a question that really gets to the core of the whole novel. If memories are heavy, is it braver to carry them or to let them go? Norwegian Wood doesn't give you an easy answer, and that's exactly what makes it such a masterpiece.